So now we come to the big moment, the choice from a short list of books that everybody would want to read, every one of them. Biddy, over to you to give us the news of who has won the Carnegie Medal 2010.
I'm delighted to announce that the 2010 CILIP Carnegie Medal is awarded to Neil Gaiman for The Graveyard.
And Neil, you're going to receive a special Braille copy
Indeed.
of the book.
It gives me great pleasure to ask Jenny and Chloe to make a presentation to Neil of the Braille version of his winning book.
Terry Pratchett told me that when he got his, he'd had a fake made out of chocolate and ate it. Oh, this is awesome. The Carnegie Medal is a literary award, but it's not just a literary award, it's the literary award. At least for me it is, because it was the first award that I knew existed. I was 7 years old, and my birthday present that year consisted of a boxed set of the 7 Narnia books by C.S. Lewis. The concluding book, The Last Battle, had on its blue and orange Pauline Baines cover the statement that this book had won the Carnegie Medal. I had no idea what this meant. I didn't know that books could win medals. But this one had. So surely I thought it was the most important medal in the world. And this idea remained. Other book-related awards, like the Nobel Prize for Literature or the Booker Prize, were latecomers and also-rans. They were not the Carnegie Medal, and were thus not as good as the Carnegie Medal. And you probably think I'm exaggerating here for dramatic effect, and I'm not. The library in which I grew up was demolished almost 30 years ago, replaced by a newer, more modern and efficient library, better in every way, except it's not the library my parents dropped me off at on their way to work. In my school holidays, it's not the place where I studied the card catalogue, looking for a sense of wonder, read my way through the children's library, discovered the impossible magic of the interlibrary loan, and eventually set out into the wild shores of adult fiction. I wonder to this day how much of who I am I owe to the quirks of individual librarians and the books they ordered. It was because of them I found caches of authors now out of favour or forgotten, J.P. Martin, Nicholas Stuart Gray, Margaret Story, and so many more, alongside the more famous and successful authors. The librarians talked to a bookish boy, pointed me at books I might enjoy, at authors I might never have thought of reading. The literature of the imagination is just that, stories which take readers to places they haven't been, to see things they haven't imagined, to see how things could be different. Prose fiction is the nearest we'll get to the experience of looking out of someone else's eyes, of seeing things from the point of view of someone who is not us. Reading fiction when young is something that gives us imagination, the most powerful thing there is. Before anything exists, it's first imagined. And empathy, which is what makes us more than singular, mechanical creatures, which is what gives us community. I was lucky. I was an imaginative child who craved books at a time when books were easy to get. The debt that I owe to Puffin Books, series editor Kay Webb, it said on every book, teaching me that books had editors, whatever they were, I would eventually find out. cannot be overstated. I don't think it's too far-fetched to suggest that one reason for the amazing crop of writers for the young the UK has produced over the last couple of decades is because of those books being around for us then. The Graveyard Book is a book that began 25 years ago in a small country churchyard on a summer's day, watching Mike, my 2-year-old son, riding his tricycle round and round the gravestones and thinking how very comfortable and happy and at home he looked. I started writing the Graveyard Book then and almost immediately stopped again. At the time I thought it was because I wasn't a good enough writer. I think now I was wrong. It wasn't that I was not a good enough writer, it was that I hadn't been a parent long enough. The book I wrote, when the time came to write it, was built on a foundation of having been a parent, having raised children and having let them go out into the world on their own. G.K. Chesterton said that the miracle of drawing with white chalk on brown paper is it teaches you that white is a color. And the miracle of writing a novel about life set in a graveyard where people neither breathe nor change is that it reminds us that life itself is miraculous and unique. Writing this book felt like a conversation with authors I'd loved, most obviously with Rudyard Kipling, whose Jungle Book became the wall I bounced my ball off, and also with Pamela Travers, whose Mary Poppins stories influenced what I wrote and how I wrote it. There are two people I want to mention here without whom this book would not be what it was. Terry Pratchett. 22 years ago, we wrote a book called Good Omens together. I described the experience at the time as being like being apprenticed to a master craftsman. And looking back, it truly was. I learned so much. And Diana Wynne Jones, who I wish had started writing books for children a decade earlier, so I could have read them growing up, but whose books I've read to my own children. Reading Diana taught me how much I could trust my readers to be bright, to work with me, to contribute their own eyes and minds and imagination to the process. I want to thank the members of the YLG and the judges for this award. I was thrilled this year to see the amazing shortlist for the Carnegie Medal. There would be no shame, I thought, in losing to any of those books, and it was a thrill and an honor to be nominated beside them. This is a golden age for children's fiction. I want to thank many people and do so very hesitantly because when I make lists, I leave people out. I want to thank Sarah Adedna, my editor at Bloomsbury. She bought my first book for children, Coraline, and has been both an amazing editor and a pillar of support and strength. Some authors are lucky enough to have one superb illustrator to work with them. I was luckier still, and I had two. Dave McKean, one of my oldest friends, nominated for a Greenaway Award today for his illustrations for our picture book poem, Crazy Hair. And Chris Riddell, whose classical and elegant illustrations for the Graveyard Book also gave him a Greenaway nomination in his own right. I know how lucky I am. I want to thank my publicists at Bloomsbury, first Lucy Holden and now Ian Lamb, and the amazing Bloomsbury sales force. I want to thank Merrily Heifetz, my agent, and Dory Simmons, my first UK agent. My family, my late father, and my mother who's here, my children, Mike who inspired the book, Maddie who impelled me to finish it, and Holly who just makes everything good by being around. And most of all, in this age of austerity into which we're currently tumbling, I wanted to say this: libraries are our future. More children are borrowing books from libraries than ever. Closing libraries can be seen as an easy way for a local authority to save a little money, and it is. But it is a terrible, terrible mistake, as we have recently begun to learn, to steal from the future to pay for today.